were 175 reporters that worked on that, 175 reporters in 56 countries. And it resulted in over 400 reports, articles in 65 media outlets. How do you pay for that? Which advertiser is going to pay for that? Because it's not an on-the-go kind of fix. So that is why I'm saying accountability journalism is expensive. Now, with women radio, I found out at a very young age that whoever controls the media controls the mind. When you control the media, you control the way people think. And with that in mind, we set out to establish what we call the unconventional women radio. We just don't work with sound bites. We decided at the inception that we're going to be doing conferences, we're going to be doing workshops, we're going to be deliberate and intentional in what we do, because we've been using deliberate and intentional, and I really want to say that it's not easy to be deliberate and intentional in whatever you want to do. So we set out and we kicked in research, and women radio started. Now, has it been easy? It has been very tough. Tough to hold government accountable, because somebody spoke about niche market. Hold government and anybody accountable when it comes to women's issues. So yes, it is tough because focusing on, so women's issues are diverse, just like you have normal issues. We need to look at women in politics, we need to look at women in sports, we need to look at students, we need to look at grassroots women. How have we been able to do that as women radio? We don't have resources in every state of Nigeria, but with the power of collaboration, which we will talk about later, we were able, and we've been able to use data to hold people accountable for the things they're doing. So the question is, have I found it easy? Nothing comes easy. It is not easy, but let me just quickly say that when my sister spoke about ownership, I'll say 90% of media owners in Nigeria are men, right? They are men. And some have agendas. Every media owner has an agenda. I have an agenda, the woman agenda. So when the agenda does not align, and the owners and the decision makers have a totally different agenda from yours, then it's going to be tough. We have we now have 5 radio licenses. We've been granted 5 radio licenses in Adamawa, in Kaduna, in Abia, in Akwa Ibom and Oyo State. And we are getting women in those states to co-own the radio station. And that is where the issue of ownership comes on, and then that is when the women can control the perspective of what happens to women. Accountability journalism, in my opinion, is dying, is suffering, and I hope somebody somewhere will be able to invest and put in money for us to support people who go out to do the work.
Yeah, you mentioned something very important, which is collaboration. Because you refer to Swiss Leaks, which is the investigation you were talking about the HSBC, which was an ICIJ investigation, of which Premium Times participated. So, and you raised the question about who could have paid for that magnitude of investigation. No one newspaper can pay for that. Yeah. But the power of collaboration helped that investigation to be done. And I'm sure that's one of the things we'll be exploring, one of the themes we'll be exploring on this panel. I'll come back to you, Deji, but I want to go to Mohammed, who is from NTA. I don't know, how easy has it been? The NTA, by the way, the Nigerian Television Authorities, for those of our colleagues who are not from Nigeria, is a state-owned, is a federal government-owned television network. So, Mohammed, how easy is it for you to practice accountability journalism, especially being owned and funded entirely by government?
Very easy.
Thank you very much, Ms. Liu. It has been established from your introduction and my two previous speakers that it's not easy. Three things are involved. The finance, the expertise of personnel, and the third one I would like to make a reference to the issue of the ownership that she said at the other end. Every media organization, like my previous speaker said, has objectives. Could be easy, like the two of them said, they simply go register their businesses as media organizations. If they are broadcasters, they acquire licenses and they're in business, but we are established by an act of the parliament. So we have boundaries, what we are supposed to do going by the act and what we are not supposed to do. And every student of journalism and mass communication knows that media ownership and control is a very serious issue. So holding people accountable is something that is difficult, very difficult, especially in public organization like ours. Who are you holding accountable, for instance? In the first place, you are the people that, mostly people say hold government accountable, but it's not only about government, businesses, and what have you. And the first speaker has made it clear that even you said it, the advertisers, the government, the politicians, people who pay your salary, who provide you with equipment, who give you direction. And it's going to be very difficult for you to probe and then come out with something.
So Mr. Mohammed, you agree that government-owned media, government ownership of media cannot allow. No,
not that it doesn't allow.
No, if you say limit, how often do you hold government? How many times in the past 5 years have you done report holding government accountable?
There are many ways of holding government accountable. You may not maybe go out and maybe do investigative report and then come out to them. In discussions and everything, you throw up issues, people discuss, people ask questions of government, you provide that platform. And we have people make calls to ask questions, to make suggestions, to make comments. All these are aspects that you probe and make government accountable. It's not restricted. We have regular programs that people come on, people, professionals, different views. And in such discussions, they throw up questions and they ask government officials to respond to issues that they feel need to be accounted for. So, in my opinion, it is not that it is only through investigative reportage that you can hold government accountable or you can hold agencies or people accountable, but even through programs, discussions, you can still hold people accountable and raise issues that will require actions and further investigation by within and without.
Thank you, Mr. We'll talk about that. I know it's a very different conversation with you, but I'll come back to you. So, Rosemary, you work for News Central. You know, I'm sure that I suspect that the challenge that you face is similar to what we face. How are you navigating around being funded by maybe or seeking advertising and sponsorship and partnership with people, interests that you rely on for sustainability?
Okay. So when you were talking about 234 Next, I was just smiling because I actually worked for, I started off a TV station called NN24, and that was Nigeria's first 24 hours TV station in Nigeria. And our mantra was fair, objective, and balanced. and we were holding everyone in power accountable. In fact, when we go for press conferences, you dare not, sincerely, you dare not come to us with brown envelope. Everyone knew that NN24 staff would not collect brown envelope. Was that sustainable? No. We could not cope. After 2 years, we crashed. I think we crashed about the same time with 234 Next, because we met the guys at 234 Next for some level of partnership, because we had the same vision, the same strategy. Now, accountability journalism should actually be a strategy on its own. And I say this because a lot of young organizations even die before 3 years. A lot of young media organizations die before 3 years. And that's because they do not understand that this is a strategy on its own. And it's a strategy you have to discuss with your board of directors and with your media owners. They need to understand that if you're going to do this, it's going to take a long time for you to even break even, not to talk about making profit. It's going to take like 10 years. And the situation we have now is that media owners, after 2-3 years, they want returns on their investment. Hey, you told me I was going to make money. And that's because we here that discuss with these media investors do not tell them the truth. We do not tell them that this is long-term investment. So I think one of the solutions is to understand that we need more media investors that understand the media, that understand accountability journalism. And then if they're coming in to invest in your business, they know that it is long-term. So that after 2-3 years, people like us that are head of commercial, we're not hitting our heads on the wall because we need to give them return on investment. They know that it's a process. They know that it's a process, and it's a strategy that makes your media organization different from the pack. Is it viable? Yes, it is viable, but it has to do with a lot of consistency, and in that consistency is where the money is. You need consistent funding. So we need more of media investors and media entrepreneurs that understand the business. But right now what we have is media owners that just see it as a way of making money, and after 2-3 years they want return on their investment. If we can solve that, I think we'll be able to do this thing called accountability journalism, also known as watchdog journalism. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go to Frank. I don't know, is Frank, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you clearly. You founded and currently run Scarlett Inc. Media. But I know that in your former life, you ran the Institute for Nonprofit News in the US, and you were also director of programs and services for Small Business and Technology Development Center. So you have deep knowledge about media sustainability and survival. So what do you think? What's your view about whether accountability journalism kills media or helps it to remain sustainable? What's your view?
Thank you for that. Just for true transparency, I didn't run the Institute for Nonprofit News. I was the chief program officer, the chief knowledge officer for about 400 nonprofit news organizations, mostly digital. So in my work there and in my current work as a consultant where I work with, I would say in the last 2 years, I've worked with about 200 different news organizations of various sizes across the US and Europe and Latin America. So just to give that, I say that just to give a context of being able to see so many organizations. Accountability journalism is hard, period. I think someone said no matter where you are in the world, journalism is struggling, and certainly accountability journalism is struggling in terms of being sustainable. I think accountability journalism is not killing media. I think it has to exist because the whole premise is that somebody has to be holding the power, those in power to account, and most media are not, right? So accountability journalism has to survive, has to sustain, because it's the only thing that's kind of keeping folks in check, the folks in power in check. With that said, though, it is extremely difficult to be sustainable, much less, And then when I say sustainable, I think Rosemary said break even. Yeah, break even and then have enough money to then reinvest into the journalism, because it's so expensive to collect, to do that work. But I think something that was said earlier by somebody else was that most advertisers don't want to be near controversial news, right? And accountability journalism is controversial news. But I think by diversifying into other areas that are less controversial, like events, I think somebody mentioned events and workshops, newsletters, those are products that allow you to have comfortable space for advertisers and sponsors. And I think that helps offset some of the challenge of, funding the accountability part of the work. But I think it's a multi-pronged approach. I don't think any one solution exists. I think what is a big point is that people go into accountability journalism saying, I want to do this work, right? Most of the folks who do this are journalists, not understanding what are the business implications of taking this path. And unless that piece is included in the strategy, as Rosemary said, I don't think it can work. If you're not setting yourself up from the very beginning to understand what the financial projections look like, where the funding is going to come from, I think you're already on the wrong path. And we do need investors. In the US, and mostly in the US, I can't speak for Europe as much, we've moved away from assuming that advertising will support this kind of work. And we're really looking at philanthropic investment and individual donors as the source of funding for this work. So I'll say that and not say anything else right now.
Right, thank you, Frank. Let me come to, I think Frank tried to go to the next questions, the next set of questions, which is the solution. But before that, let me come to Deji, who has been working with Nigerian-based organizations about sustainability. I'm sure that your organization has done a review of the operations, especially for organizations that you currently fund and mentor. So, what do you think are their major problems, especially those of them who do accountability journalism? What are the challenges that you've seen talking and working with these organizations?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think the last speaker mentioned one of them, which is most media owners are driven by the social purpose of the media. Thank you. Most media owners are driven by the social purpose of the media, and it should be so. However, you are building an enterprise, and be as it may that it's a social enterprise, there's a lot that determines whether or not any enterprise succeeds. Organizations succeed or fail in all sectors of engagement. And because we are, in some sense, altruistic and social in our leaning, does not give us an entitlement to success. The main issue is that I have seen is the depth of articulation of the problem at inception is lacking due to the passion of those who start this organization. Many people say, okay, there's a dearth in reporting in an area, and then they get a team together. Some people are so passionate, they start doing it themselves. And they put a platform, thanks to the Internet of Things, platforms are easy to put together, and they start reporting. However, by the time they want to expand on that, and they have salaries to now pay, it becomes a problem. And so the interrogation of their organization and looking at every creation as a media product, looking at journalism as a media product is a very huge gap. And that still takes me back to the first point, the degree of articulation of the problem. If we articulate and spell out all our risks, do our SWOT analysis and look at the environment, we know these things are clear. We know some people will take away advertising from us. We know some people will criticize the work we do. We know some people will even use the same media to combat the accountability work that we do. These are clear and real risks that we know and have to prepare for. And so far, these are some of the issues that I've observed with the organizations we support and looking at the industry as a whole. Another thing that is affecting it is journalism in general has been slow to innovate around the information ecosystem it finds itself. The information ecosystem is constantly changing. We moved from being a monopoly to the internet age, and now we are moving into an age of advanced tech, artificial intelligence, and conversations about those happened yesterday, and they were really interesting. How these things affect us, how our environment affect us, affect our business, affect our ability to do our work well, they do enhance, they also come with their risks and problems, and it is our responsibilities as people who create these enterprises, these social enterprises, these media houses, to actually understand these problems and evolve as we tackle them. No organization is guaranteed eternal life. You have to continue to change, roll out products, understand your verticals, build your audiences, and tackle your revenue deliberately. Whether it be donor funded, whether it be advertising, and any other model, you have to create your own way of tackling the problem in front of you as a media organization. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. And that is something that I think, this is a point I think every media owner needs to think about when starting out or re-strategizing. And that's something we are really engaging with in the Nigerian Media Innovation Program that I happen to lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deji. I think you are already providing solution to the problem. Let me be clear. The problems, the matter we are discussing now is a matter of global concern. It's not a Nigerian problem. And it's something, conversations are going on around the world. How to sustain, the media is under pressure, not to talk of even accountability journalism itself. So, and people are then looking at ways. There are people who believe that the existing funding model cannot sustain accountability journalism. A lot of journalists who are frustrated by the fact that their media organizations cannot do enough accountability journalism are pulling out and funding non-profit newsrooms around the world. And these non-profit newsrooms are then doing even more accountability journalism than the legacy media. So that's why you have, if you look at the work, today there are more than 200 members of the Global Investigative Journalism Network around the world. And all these small organizations just try to enhance journalists' capacity to do accountability journalism. So we need to begin to talk about, we are very clear about the problem, that it is difficult to do accountability journalism, whether in the private, independent media, or in government-owned media. In terms of government, it's about censorship. The government has the money to fund accountability journalism, but as we have learned, government will rather weaken accountability journalism than support it. So we need to begin to think, how do we solve this problem? How do we innovate around sustainability so that accountability journalism does not die? Frank, do you want to go first?
Thank you. Again, I like the way you have phrased your question this time. It's about sustainability of the media as the entire ecosystem in which accountability journalism thrives. I don't think accountability journalism on its own can thrive if the media itself is not thriving. I think we need to establish that. In 1992, I was editor of the Vanguard, and I went for a training at Thompson Foundation in Cardiff. And it was the first time that the foundation was holding a cohort on the editor as a manager. Yeah? Just to create in editors and senior journalists that sense of responsibility that their journalism will die if they are not good managers. When I got back, I had a very interesting conversation with a very senior professional colleague of mine, just to share with him my experience in Cardiff. And he was so dismissive. He said, look, you forget it. We are here for social good. And I tried to make the point that yes, we are a tool for social good. But if our business model is not strong, we cannot offer that service of being a tool for social good. And I think that's what we now realize. The media globally is afflicted today with the challenge of sustainability. So I think it's important that we now begin to focus on solutions. Now, what are the solutions? You need to be sure that your organization is being run properly, is being managed properly. I don't think it is good to think or suggest that a bank should be better managed than a media organization. They both demand and deserve top-level management. That is the first thing you start from. You know, so when you then begin to talk about advertising, you are racing away from the first, the foundational issues. How do you buy your newsprint? What kind of technology that enables your digital operations? What do you do about reader revenues? What do you do, even if you were to concentrate on philanthropy funding? My experience has been that many of the foundations don't fund you forever. So that itself doesn't guarantee eternity. They fund you for a while and they say to you, hey Frank, I think from now on you can stand on your feet.
Maybe except there is an endowment, which is basically absent here.
Well, you could have the endowment, but the endowment would not be enough to do all this kind of work that we're talking about. So you need to have good management, you need to have a good business model. You need to have good professionals managing the organization. You need to begin to pivot from an advertising-centric revenues to reader-based revenues, either as an alternative or complementary to what you are doing. For me, this is very, very important. And then, of course, be quite responsible in what you do. So the way that journalism is challenged today, I believe even more so for accountability journalism. But if you look at the experience of Daily Maverick in South Africa, I believe is perhaps one of the best examples of accountability journalism in Africa. And every month, Daily Maverick is reporting expansion in revenues. So there are examples that are working. And for me, that is it. We need to be broad-minded in the way we approach this. It's not just to think about whether your advertiser would like you or not like you. I don't think the advertisers, even if they like you today, have the money to sustain the media as we see it today. So for me, that's the point that I'd like to make.
So Frank, but I want you to think about something. I will leave you and go elsewhere. But you left the Vanguard in 2000, I don't know, maybe 2000. No, when did you found the business?
Business Day was 2001.
2001.
Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah. You founded business in 2001.
Yeah. I left the Vanguard in 1998.
In 1998.
Yes.
That's the point. So now, and yet so many newspapers, including my own newspaper, Next,
yes,
came and died.
Yes.
You are still here.
Yes.
So will you share the secret with us? But I'll come back to you.
I will be very glad to provide.
Yes, I'll come back. I'll come back to you.
My experience. Yes.
Yeah. So let me come to Deji this time. Deji, you've been thinking about. Sorry, audience, we'll come to you in a while. But I want to ask Deji, you've been thinking, because we need to help our brother from NTA to perhaps begin to think about how, not just NTA, but of course, they are representatives of a lot of government-owned media here, and those organizations are providing huge service to our people. So, but of course, Section 22 of the Nigerian Constitution expects the media to provide what? To hold the people accountable. And so they have to do that. You've been thinking about sustainability in the past few years. What do you think government-owned organizations can do to perform their role of holding businesses, individuals, and government accountable? Deji.
Okay. A question that I think perhaps he needs to also answer. Because I think for government-owned organizations, it's not really a question of sustainability, but mission. And also quality of engagement. The truth is, I believe in terms of the ethics of journalism and the way we create our stories and tell our stories, done correctly, no matter the scale, whether it's a local level story, a business level story, or a meso level story, the tenets and the ethics of journalism, in some form or way, contains an accountability part. If you are doing a well-rounded story, during the context of the story, you will reveal things that one party or the other does not want to reveal. And there are different approaches to it. In terms of public interest media, I think it's about ownership. It's about the mission and the leadership of the organization, because there are examples all over the world of government-owned media institutions that hold government accountable to a good extent. There isn't any perfect framework anywhere, but you can see, you can watch even the BBC or the SABC in South Africa and see the kind of stories they do about government infrastructure and government personalities. Because in terms of sustainability, I think they have taxpayer money to spend, which other private enterprise don't have. They have other resource money to spend, which is based on allocation. So they are more comfortable in terms of resources than all our other organizations. So I think it's a question of mission for publicly owned organizations.
I think I agree with you to a large extent, because there used to be a gentleman here in Radio Nigeria, which is another government-owned organization. His name was Solomon Adebayo. For the period that he worked in Radio Nigeria, he did quite a lot of great reporting, holding government agencies accountable. So basically, Toun, will you say there is, rather than problem of resources and ownership, that there is also a problem of maybe self-censorship in public media?
So before I talk about self-sponsorship, I'd like to quickly say something. When you were talking to my Oga at the other end there on NTA, so Women Radio carried out a report on the Chibok girls. We went to Borno State, and we spoke to families of the Chibok girls, and one of the girls that is back home. Talking about collaboration again, we worked with a few media in Maiduguri, in Borno State. Now, there is, because you see, accountability destroys friendship sometimes. And what I'm about to say is a fact that there was an allegation that the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs is not managing a particular budget well, and that the budget was allocated to families of the Chibok girls. Now, we went there and we spoke to the families, and they said they have never seen anything. They've not benefited from anything. Now, we did that documentary, and we gave the Ministry of Women Affairs. The Minister of Women Affairs then is a close friend of mine. And so I was now wondering, my colleagues were, are we going to do this? Are we not going to do this? Oh, she's your friend. I said, I have a duty. I have a duty. And so we gave them the right of response. We said, this is what the family said. And we waited and waited 1 week. We wanted to release the documentary at the anniversary. We couldn't. 1 week, 2 weeks, and I started chasing everybody. And then we said, okay, we're going to release the documentary. So we hosted a mini conference of Nigerian media. And that documentary that we did has stained the relationship, but I still have a job to do. So I just quickly needed to mention that sometimes those who work with government agencies, if they have consciences, they will do the right thing. Yeah. You know, irrespective. I've not answered the question.
No, I think you gave more than.
Then we spoke about brown envelopes.
Okay.
Brown envelopes. My sister spoke about brown envelopes. CM, and he spoke about structure. Management structure matters. At Women Radio, if you collect, and Auntie is here, if you collect a brown envelope, directly or indirectly, it is outright your living. But how are we able to sustain that? Because we pay salaries. A lot of media houses don't pay salaries. And I was talking to Uncle Dapsy. I said, we need to disrupt the media. Any media house, like any organization, you employ people, you don't pay salaries. They have to close shop. Because when you pay salaries, then there's dignity in the job that they are doing. So salaries, and 7.5 years now we've been running Women Radio, we've never owed salary for 1 day. But to now, can I answer your question?
No, I think you've answered my question. You know, you're talking about ethics.
Ethics is very important.
I think we spoke about ethics extensively yesterday, but we can never stop talking about it. There is no way a journalist who is unethical.
My brother spoke about the BBC. The BBC is funded by taxpayers.
Yeah.
We need to get media in Nigeria to be funded one way or the other, whether through membership, whether through donors.
Those are actually the solutions that I want us to be talking about. How do we innovate to make the media sustainable? Because as Frank said, if the media is sustainable, whatever kind of journalism, whether it's solution journalism, whether it is fact-checking, whether it is celebrity journalism or whatever, it will thrive, as he said, and I love that. Now, Rosemary, you know, you gave us a bit of a background about your history, how you were part of NN24, which collapsed, and now you are part of News Central, possibly owned by the same kind of guys who own NN24. Am I correct?
No, not at all.
Eh?
Not at all.
Oh, so the ownership is different.
This ownership understands media.
Okay, my understanding is that the ownerships are a bit similar. But you are now in another organization. What lesson did you learn from what happened to NN24? And how are you going around it to ensure that what happened at the time does not happen again?
So like I said, at NN24, I think it was also a case of not properly planning, not doing a true projection. So at New Central TV, we're very intentional about accountability journalism. I mean, I think one of the challenges we have is funding it, but we know that is what we practice and we do it every day. What we're doing to ensure that it's sustainable, it's really partnership and collaborations. From the beginning of time at New Central TV, we have been pushing for partnerships and collaborations. Partnerships with independent content producers, partnerships with other media houses. I mean, we are not shy to come to a business day to say, hey, let's partner on the story, because we need to understand the consumption behavior and consumption pattern of our target audience. There might be a story that we want to push out, and people might not want to read it. They might want to listen to it. So they might want to watch it. So, hey, let's help you reduce your production costs. Come to us, let's co-create, and let's share revenue. So that's one way we're going around it. And I would like to say a big thank you to one of our partners, Africa Check, that have believed in us from the beginning. I mean, one thing we do in New Central, fact-checking. We're positioning ourselves as thought leaders in areas of fact-checking. We debunk fake news, and you would never find New Central carrying fake news. So what we do with Africa Check is to identify those stories that are making the rounds every week, and we pick out one story, and we dissect it, we analyze it, we do our research, we go to those people that are involved in those stories and find out the true stories. Does it take money to create that sort of content? Yes, because that content comes out once every week. Africa Check has worked with us for about 2 years now, and we're already having conversations on how we will expand this content to about 30 minutes, how we would not just be talking about one story, but 2 to 3 stories. And we do this for stories around Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, at least 5 countries every week. So yeah, partnership is the way for us, and I believe that is also the way for every media organization. I'm discussing with Toun about how we can do some investigative and unraveling stories on issues around women. And it's not just for radio, for TV. The guys that are really making headway are really
I'll go to Mohammed. Okay. Because you spoke about, Rosemary, you spoke about credibility.
Yes.
You spoke about partnerships.
Yes.
Those are key, those are key words in sustaining media. As Frank and most of you have said on this panel, that people must believe you. You must have integrity. You must pay your staff, meaning they must be ethical. Everyone must be ethical. So I'm just highlighting the things that any media organization must do to be sustainable. So I come to you, Mohammed, again. You like to say the NTA is the largest TV network in Africa. Of course, I don't think, I don't know of the empirical evidence on which that is based, but maybe it is true because you are present in every state and people watch you a lot. But you still get funded largely by the federal government. Is it that you don't make enough money from advertising so that you do not continue to draw from public funds? What is the problem? Because that conversation has been on.
Actually, the funding from government is not enough. There are many competing demands that the government had to contend with. So the funding is not enough. And as a public service, most of the work we do is not with the intention of, it's not profit-oriented, so to say. So we are offering social services, and most of the income we generate from advertisements and what have you is brought back into the day-to-day running of the organization to fund operations. The government pays salary, yes, and that is very important because it is payment of salary that made many media organizations to go under. And it is what is responsible for the brand envelope syndrome we are talking about and what have you. Salaries are paid, but you need a lot much more than salary to survive. We are talking about sustainability now. If you are talking about sustainability, it means you have to have a business, despite being a public run media organization, you have to have a business sustainability plan. You have to have the technology you are going to use, the staff you are going to use, the law operation, the laws and policies within which you operate. All these things will determine the quality of the content that you will give that will make advertisers to even come to you. Now, most of us, almost all the media organizations are chasing the same set of advertisers. And then the emergence of the new media has even made it more difficult, because on the internet, you can assess the number of people that have viewed a particular program, the people that are watching a particular program. There are empirical evidences that will show you that, okay, this program that is being run live by NTA has 1,500 people watching. But if they are watching from the tube, there is nothing to determine how many people are watching that. So advertisers are actually moving towards the digital platform. That is why you see now almost every media organization has the digital component, so as to complement its traditional media organization. And of course, one key issue that I want to raise here is the issue of sustainability that we all talk about, and the issue of collaboration. This is global now, because we've had a lot of demands, a lot of requests from within and outside Nigeria for collaborations, and we are doing it. Presently, the African Union of Broadcasting, for instance, there is components of collaboration between all national televisions and radios of Africa, and we've gone far in that. And it is really cutting costs, because the GTV, for instance, if there is the Nigeria election, they could simply join us from here, and we give them everything, because they are our partners. The same thing happens when there was the Kenyan election. We had Kenyan reporters reporting from Kenya for us on our network live. So the issue of collaboration cannot be overemphasized. It cannot be overemphasized, because presently...
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed.
Okay.
I think the strongest point the strongest takeaway from your comment is that cutting costs, collaboration can help us cut costs. For instance, if you are doing a story, maybe it's a cross-border investigation, and you don't have to go to Ghana or Sierra Leone if you are collaborating with organizations. And it is important that we are all here networking, making friends, meaning that if you are doing stories across borders, maybe there is you are investigating a company that is present in many countries. You don't have to fly to those countries. Once there is collaboration, once there is networking, and that way you can cut costs and remain sustainable. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for bringing that forward. Fran.
Here.
The organizers are in the process of chasing us out of here, so we have to be very fast. So, Frank, sorry for keeping you waiting for this long. I just want to tell us exactly in a few minutes what you think, given your own experience managing non-profit organizations, for membership organization of non-profit news for a while. What do you think those of us in Africa can learn from the kind of data, from the kind of experience that you gather? What exactly should we be doing to make media sustainable on our continent?
So quickly, I think several points have been made around diversifying revenue. So, I agree with the idea of cutting costs through collaboration and partnerships, right, to reduce reporting expenses. But I feel that when you look at cutting costs as the way to sustainability, you have to also look at ways to bring in new revenue, right? So it's a both and. It's not one or, it's both and. Somebody mentioned reader revenue. I think it was Frank that may have mentioned reader revenue. Reader revenue and membership in particular, or individual donations is a relatively new concept in the US. And it's one that says, let's get away from relying on advertisers and let the readers who value our content actually pay for it. Not in the sense of subscriptions, right, which is the traditional legacy model, but really from understanding the mission, understanding what we're trying to do, sharing our impact with them and having them support us. So reader revenue is huge. but a diversified revenue mix. In the US, we have identified about 8 different revenue streams that news organizations can take on to grow revenue. So obviously philanthropic is one, advertising. Sponsorship I love. I'm actually getting ready to do something for Google News Initiative all around sponsorship, because it takes away that transactional eyeball, ear, whatever metrics people use to having it be more of a global, a more holistic approach to supporting a news organization where they're tied into your mission, they're tied into the quality of your audience, not just necessarily the quantity of your audience. There's also resources like fees. If you do something exceptionally well that others don't do as well, you can charge other media organizations for your videography, your IT, whatever resources you have that you're exceptional at. So we've identified 8 different revenue streams that news organizations can access to really diversify their revenue. And it's a mix of both philanthropic from institutions and from individuals, as well as more what we say revenue from businesses, more advertising, sponsorship, branded content. I don't know if that's a thing in Nigeria. And then also utilizing the skills in-house to generate revenues through that way as well. IT, workshops, events. Events are huge as a way of not only getting revenue, but engaging your audience and getting sponsorships. I love that the most because I call it a threefer. You're killing 3 birds with 1 stone. So I think it's diversified revenues, good business management. A lot of news organizations are started and run by journalists who were told never to understand business, and now they're running organizations and they don't understand business. So good management, good cost-cutting structure, good strategy, and a diversified set of revenue streams. Hopefully I got it in my time limit.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope we all listened to her. She spoke about the need. She basically said advertising cannot be a savior as far as accountability journalism is concerned. And for media sustainability, we must begin to think about new revenue model. I think we have less than 10 minutes to go, and there are so many hands up. I don't know how to cope. I have just opportunity for 2 people. How do I use this power that I have? Okay, the last man there in white cap. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ali Rabi. I'm from NTA.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Regarding what the Oga said, there is one issue holding government accountable. The issue of the e-passport for the immigration is one of our reporters that do. We don't call it this investigative report, data journalism. We call it special report. He do a special report concerning the e-passport. That has bring a positive impact on it. The issue of the previous government, when they are doing this press conference of scorecard on the government, is the same person that said, please, they are saying these things, but our reporters go to the field and make an assessment on what they are saying and what is on the ground. So I think the NTA is doing a lot of concerning taking the government accountable. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Sonaiya Abigail. Firstly, I want to say something about revenue derivation. A friend of mine sometime actually had a story, a beautiful story, and it was titled Dark Chains. So when I saw the story, I scripted it, and we went to NTA and AIT in my place for them to see how they can produce this story and maybe make revenue from it, because all she wanted was to tell a story. When we went to them, they actually looked at us as children, like there's no content here and all of that. But somehow, I got in contact with a producer and an awards-winning movie producer in Nigeria bought that story. And she actually got nominated for AMA Awards for that story. So what I want to say is, sometimes most of these big organizations, they actually see revenue, but they don't appreciate it because they feel that it's coming from the wrong source, or maybe children that actually have nothing to offer. Furthermore, I want to also talk about revenue derivation, because that's all we are talking about here. I think that most of these governments, journalism, media houses, organizations should go out there, especially in places that you meet young minds that have stories to tell. We can do radio movies, we can do TV shows and all of that. These young people that have the stories, they can also go out there to sort for funds, actually. Get it. All you have to do is co-produce it with them, make your money, and also pronounce them to the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Rosemary, do you want to make just a short comment about
I just want to put our head of programs on the spot. Tolulope, please raise your hand, because we are interested in partnerships.
Don't mind her. This is Women Radio. We will do
Sir.
it better for you. We will do it better for
Talk
you.
to Tolulope Adelere or meet me after the session.
We will do it together for you. We will work together.
Okay. Call you, please identify yourself and your affiliation. Just two more people. I'm told we don't have time. Okay, in front here.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited about that contribution. That's how you get a job, by the way. So, and I hope that happens at the end of this event. So, couple of points. The conversation here assumes all media houses are interested in sustainability and are interested in working together and are interested in accountability. I dare say no. Personal experience, I spent 10 years as the lead of a private funding organization in Nigeria. And that 10 years I spent working with the media organization. First instance, we approached them and said, you need to work together to save costs, identify important issues affecting the country, pull your resources together, we will backstop you, do your report, and make sure you get mileage on those issues. We actually took them to one of the best resorts in Nigeria for 3 days of retreat, planning the outline of these engagements. Countdown to 1 month, 3 months later, it failed completely. The media organizations were unable to work together, collaborate, and they were unable to leverage the resources that we had to backstop that engagement. So that is one. So I think as we have this conversation, we should also think of the willing, those who are interested, and also find a way to isolate the media organizations who don't share these ideals, so that we don't use those ones to undermine the efforts of those who want to work together. Second point, we put resources, approached electronic media organizations in Nigeria and said, NBC is constantly harassing you. We want to fund your court case. We'll give you a lawyer. But we want to fund this case so that we can stop this harassment, so you can do your investigative work and push accountability. Not one of them, not one, took up that challenge to do this. Why is that? Because the environment, the larger environment, doesn't allow media organizations to have the kind of voice to challenge government. How do you address that? Collaboration, alternative funding options. I don't think the sustainability question is going to be solved by media organizations alone. That will be unfair to think that you guys on the table will be the ones to solve your sustainability problem. Other people who are in this country, who are interested in the welfare of this country, welfare of West Africa, welfare of the world, must pull in unencumbered resources to media organizations to help them do their work. But you have to identify those who are interested. You have to fight the external system that makes their work difficult. And you have to isolate those who are undermining that system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ilo. The last person, who is that person going to be? The woman here, yeah. Sorry for, we don't have time, and but we can continue the conversation during lunch. Please.
It's good to be back. This is a beautiful and interactive session. I should say, give them a round of applause, please. Those ones on the high table. It's beautiful. I mean, all of you are making sense. I mean, if African journalists come together under one roof and behave like this and talk like this, I think African journalism will have a place in this world. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So thank you guys for being a great audience. No, we don't have time again, but you can approach any of these gentlemen and women. No, they just have 1 minute to make closing remarks, and then we are done. We can't take comment from the audience. Now, before they make their own comment, or maybe they should, before I make a closing remark, I say you should be thinking whether to willingly tell us your secret. You've been around, so many organizations came and collapsed, you are still here. You're doing some very remarkable work. You try to do subscription, which a lot of us are afraid to do. You closed up your readership and you expect people to pay to read in some ways. Very brave of you to do that. Can you share with us some of your other strategies that has allowed you to remain sustainable since 2001?
Thank you. Let me just very quickly provide some information to Mr. Ilo. The Newspapers Proprietors Association of Nigeria, of which I'm a member, had a seminar last week at a resort. And it was about collaboration. So the newspapers, at least, are already collaborating. Many of them are now printing in same locations. They have boxed their press or sold, and they are printing together. This was unthinkable some years ago. So collaboration is already happening in the media. But let me talk about Business Day. When we started, our traditional business accounted for 100% of our revenues. And our traditional business is simply print, subscription, print advertising. Today, our traditional business accounts for 49% of our revenues. 49% of our revenues. We expect that in 2 years, we will take it down to 40% of our revenues. We would like to be at a point of 70-30, and we think we will be comfortable. We think it is doable. What are we doing? It's simply revenue diversification. Our events and conferences unit, for instance, added to our digital operations, provide today 51% of our revenues. As you said, we started paid digital subscription in Africa. And today, we have subscribers who contribute by taking paid subscription between 15 and 25,000 naira a year. What are we doing? We are investing in journalism. We are investing in journalism. They talk about not paying salaries. Fortunately, we pay salaries. I imagine today, tomorrow, we are paying July salaries. I have two of my editors here in the room. You can go to them privately and talk to them. We invest in journalism. We simply believe that good journalism should attract some kind of revenue. That's our principle at Business Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. Let me start from Mohammed. I guess Mohammed what are your closing thoughts on this issue of accountability, journalism, and media sustainability? Just 1 minute.
Yeah, it's good that we are discussing it, and by discussing it, it means we are trying to find a solution to it. It's something that is global, like you said, and it's something that every media that means business needs to be part of it. And like we said here, we need to collaborate. We need to revisit our models. We need to see how we can change the narrative of making this profession of journalism what it ought to be, the watchdog of the society, as well as a model that will be respected, a profession that will be respected like every other profession that we have in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Frank, what's your closing thoughts on this conversation? What's your closing thoughts? Fran, are you still there?
I'm going to say something very controversial. I think print is dead. I think print is an incredibly large overhead cost that will definitely not be sustainable. I think the move to digital, if people are still kind of transitioning, I think they got to move over to digital. I worked with a news organization in Tanzania, and the editor and publisher said, I've got to start up again, and the cost is going to be great because I have to print. And I said, why are you printing anything? Everybody has WhatsApp. Use your digital platform to get your information out, because there's nobody in any African country I've ever been in that doesn't have WhatsApp and doesn't have a phone. If you need to use different distribution platforms to get the message out, do it. But print cannot be sustained. The cost is just too great. So that's super controversial, I know, but I had to just say it because that's my true belief. Diversify revenue, reduce cost, and print is the biggest cost.
Thank you, Fran. Rosemary, what are your thoughts, your last thought in 1 minute on this topic?
So for me, I'll pick it up from where Mr. Frank stops.
Can you use the other microphone?
Can you hear me? Okay. I'll pick it up from where Mr. Frank stops. At New Central TV, we are also investing heavily in journalism. We invested heavily in technology equipment, and we invest heavily in training. From time to time, we partner with the School of Media and Communications. I mean, that's like one of the best media schools in Nigeria to train our editors in writing, editing. So training is also a way we are ensuring that we do the right thing in terms of accountability journalism. And of course, I would emphasize partnerships. You cannot get it wrong with partnerships. Media houses, let's look for a way to cut our costs by partnering with each other, in terms of production, and then we share revenue afterwards. So partnership is like the big way to go right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Deji.
All right. I had three things to end with, and one of them has been spoken about, which is diversification. We all have to look at different ways of funding our media organizations. The second thing, which I think is very, very major for me, is that with the information ecosystem we have, media consumption of different formats has now become an intimate, and it will become more and more of an intimate experience. People are selective in where they get their information from, what platforms they use, and we need to meet people where they are. And we need to innovate around our distribution. And finally, we need to also understand these audiences, understand them, segment them, and also engage them in these places. And when you understand them and you are innovating around how you are distributing to them, you can now think of better ways to monetize the audiences you have and monetize the talents and skills and services that every media organization inherently also have. And the last thing I'll say is this: no matter what strategy you're pulling, there must be value. Your journalism and your content must be very, very high value and high quality. And we should always make sure that every article, every story, every audio or video product consumed is enjoyable. It's something that people don't see as a waste of their time, because it's a zero-sum game now. So we need to put in that effort.
Thank you, Deji. Thank you, Deji. Toun.
Thank you very much. I think we need to focus on being on themes. My niche is strictly women, and I don't break news. I'm not Channels, I'm not TVC, I'm not Premium Times. I will not break news. But when you break the news, I will follow it up as it relates to women. So make sure you stay focused on your niche. My niche is women. Collaborative partnerships, everybody have spoken about it here, and it's very key. We work with Invictus Africa for data. We've worked with Wole Soyinka Center for investigative journalism, because we can have reporters and commentators in every state of Nigeria. So we need the eyes of other people and the voices of other people. So that collaboration is really working for me. It also saves cost. The third thing, he mentioned diversifying revenue streams. We've done that. We have a program on women radio, Radio Doctor, where we have real doctors, yes, 30 seconds, where we have real doctors who come on radio to consult free for women. That program was running for 7 years consistently. By August, ACT Foundation is sponsoring that program. So you just need to diversify. We have the Voice of Women conference that we host every year. It's funded, it's sponsored, we get donations. We have the Women Radio membership. And thank you very much. My brother is coming in to help us work on that. Across the 36 states of Nigeria, we have members there who are able to send us reports for us to be able to focus on the things we do. Now, the mission and vision is to have a women radio in every state of Nigeria, so women can co-own, because at the end of the day, when you control the mind, you control, when you control media, you control the mind.
Thank you.
And that is my mission. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you, Toun. Thank you so much. Thank you. For us in Premium Times, which I represent, we've been thinking about this whole problem of sustainability all the time, especially given our history that some of us work from newspapers that collapsed before we got to this bus stop. So it's something that we think about all the time. And when we came, the first thing that we did was to begin to experiment. One of the experiments that we did was to perhaps incorporate a non-profit entity, which basically supported our investigations. And then we've invested a lot in partnerships. Partnership basically has made us what we have, and we always encourage people to really always think about partnership and collaboration. Of course, we receive traditional advertising, but we are also very innovative about advertising. We meet people at the point of their need, not waiting for them to come to us. We are engaged in book publishing, we do events, we do training, we do data and analysis service, we've experimented with donation and membership, and we do printed, special magazine, printed publication. So those are the things that I just thought it's important to share, and in case it's something that people want to think about. But I must thank you for staying glued to your seat. We've overstayed our welcome here, but we thank you for listening to us all the same. I could not have asked for a better panel. Frank, thank you for coming. Toun, thank you so much for your thoughts. Deji, I'm really grateful. And Rosemary, what a great way of knowing you. My brother Mohammed, thanks for coming. And Fran, I can't see you very well, but we really value your contribution, and we'll keep in touch because this conversation has to continue. Thank you so much.